right, guys, I think I'm going to jump right into it. Today, I would like to discuss a concept and a term that is quite very popular that has been discussed throughout the ages, and it's the term faith. So, basically, I will define, and I will discuss on the definition of what faith is. Um, I know that a lot of people have given a definition with obviously good intentions through books or predications, public speeches, and all that stuff. And I think now more than ever, we actually need to discuss the term and its definition, what it means. Why am I saying this? I said this because if you go to the book of Luke 18, there is a parable which is called the parable of the persistent widow. So it's the story of a woman, of a widow, who was actually seeking justice from a judge, and she's seeking justice persistently. So she keeps demanding justice from the judge, and the Bible clearly tells us that the judge did not even fear God or didn't care about God anyway. And after being persistently followed by that woman, by the widow woman, he decided just to grant her justice. And she's being used in the story as an example of faith. But here's a pertinent question that Jesus asked in the same book, chapter 18, verse 8. And this is what he says. When the Son of Man comes, this is a question that Jesus asked. However, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on the earth? Huh, that is quite strange. Why is he asking such question? It's actually very strange in the beginning. Why would he ask such question? There's something off here. Why? And I came to realize that he had to ask this question because surely something is going to happen. Something negative is going to happen to the global level of faith of the church. Something is surely going to happen. Um, and what I like to do when I discuss a biblical term is to let the term being defined by the scripture. So if I'm looking for a further definition or a further explanation of a verse, I gotta go to another scripture that can explain the previous scripture. And that's what I'm gonna do now. So I'm gonna take you to the book of Matthew, Matthew 24. And now the book of Matthew 24 is, in my opinion, uh, the simplest and probably the best passage that gives us an insight of the future persecutions that will occur upon the church. Now, I'm not going to read the whole book, but I'm only going to read a passage of the book of Matthew 24, which is starting from verse 9 to verse 11. And I read, then you will be handed over to be persecuted and put to death, and you will be hated by all nations because of me. At that time, many will turn away from the faith and will betray and hate each other, and many false prophets will appear and deceive many people. Wow. So I'm going to read again verse 10. It says, at that time, many will turn away from the faith and will betray and hate each other. Now, the passage of Matthew 24 is more of a descriptive passage that is preceding the coming of the Lord. And if I send you back again to the book of Luke, chapter 18, verse 8, Jesus is actually asking, is he gonna find the faith when he comes back? When the Son of Man comes, is he gonna find faith? And the question gets an explanation on in a passage of Matthew 24, verse 10, where it is written that at that time many will turn away from the faith and will betray and hate each other. Now, I kind of like understand why many will turn away from the faith, though there are no valid excuses to turn away from the faith. But I can understand why it will definitely happen. It will definitely happen because of the circumstances, not just any, but harsh circumstances that will surround the church during a near future. And those circumstances will be characterized by disease, wars, economic poverty, and persecution, direct persecutions against Christians. Now, I kind of like understand that during those times, the level of faith in the church will definitely decrease, and many will just give up on faith and turn away from it. So So now that we are actually entering um, a phase of our history that really seems to resemble to some form of apocalyptic event. I think it is very good that we discuss actually the term of faith. So here's the question: what is faith? If I wanted, I could have given you a definition from a book. I could have given you a definition taken from an example and say so many things. Probably because I would probably want to be catchy. I would probably want to sound popular. I would probably want to sound, I don't know, anything. But the many definitions that people use sometimes they can be good, but they will not be useful during harsh and difficult times. They will not be useful during spiritual warfare. And the best thing to do is to let biblical terms being defined by the scripture. So, what is faith? If I have to define faith, I will simply go to the book of Hebrews, the book of Hebrews, chapter 11, from verse 1, and I'm going to read quickly. I'm going to read quickly for you. Right. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1. Now, faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. Wow, that's actually beautiful. That sounds quite poetic. I'm going to read again. Now, faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. Wow, that's fantastic. Now, it's very important not to limit yourself to to this passage of Hebrews. Okay, and I'll tell you why. It's actually so poetic. It's beautiful. I love it. The thing is, what happened is with time, people from the New Age world, the New Age system, have kind of like managed to catch up with the definition, and they came up with all sorts of terms to define faith as well. But what they actually define faith is what they define as faith is not faith. It's actually certainty. Okay. Now, certainty, it's also a form of confidence, all right? It's also a form of confidence. It's also some form of confidence on something that you may expect, something that you've probably not seen, but it's not faith. It looks like faith, but it's not faith. Now, in order to really separate ourselves from worldly definitions and from New Age definition, I then suggest that you carry on again the study on the terms of faith and that you go to the book of Romans chapter 10 verse 17, because the next question after asking what is faith, we should all ask ourselves, where does faith comes from? That is very important. And then when you are able to normally differentiate, to actually find an answer to that second question, you'll be able to differentiate yourself from New Age teachings. Okay, because certainty does not come from the same place that faith comes from. Now, in Romans chapter 10, verse 17, it is written, consequently, faith comes from hearing the message, and the message is heard through the word about Christ. Okay? That's quite very beautiful. Consequently, faith comes from hearing the message, and the message is heard through the word about Christ. All right? So, after understanding the simple definition of faith that is actually described in Hebrews 11:1, then we have to ask ourselves, where does faith come from? Faith has to come from a place where you heard a message, okay? And the message is heard through the word about Christ. So it's a message that comes from God. Certainty does not come from a message that you heard from God, okay? And that's a big difference. So I'll give you an example. If I live, for example, if I live in Cape Town City, okay, and I hear God telling me, Maurice, stand up, leave, and go live in Durban City. All right, my faith is not gonna come from my own certainty. No, my faith comes from the words that I heard from God. So God will have spoken something to me. Okay, God has to say something. So I need to hear something first. All right, and I heard, and that whatever I hear should be coming from God, and that's where faith comes from. All right, it's the same thing with your career, with a trustable partner, with a decision that you will make. You gotta have to hear from God. Once God speaks to you, okay, the message you hear from God will will germinate faith in you. Do you understand what I'm saying? That's basically how it works. Now the difference with certainty does not comes in the same way that faith comes. In certainty, I may be uh, standing somewhere, standing somewhere, and I will probably be uh, thinking of, let's say that I want to apply for a job somewhere, okay? And I never heard anything from God about the job. I never heard any of his opinion about me applying for that job. But I am certain that I can get the job. I have that form of assurance, that kind of confidence, that kind of cockiness that says, yeah, I can definitely go and get the job. Well, this can happen. It may or it may not happen, but this is more rely. This I'm more relying myself on certainty. All right. So when it comes to in faith, God has to start with a message that He's going to give me. I need to hear that message, and I need to live according to it. All right. Now, if I want to go further now, if I want to go further with faith, then I'm going to lead you to the book of James. The book of James in chapter 2. Uh, I'm not going to read the whole passage, but I'm just going to read a quick snippet um, from verse 18, from verse 18 to verse 24. But someone will say, you have faith and I have works. Show me your faith without your works, and I will show you my faith by my works. You believe that there is one God. You do well. Even the demons believe and tremble. But do you want to know, O foolish man, that faith without works is dead? Was not Abraham our father justified by works when he offered Isaac his son on the altar? Do you see that faith was working together with his works? And by works faith was made perfect? And the scripture was fulfilled which says, Abraham believed God, and it was accounted to him for righteousness, and he was called a friend of God. You see then that a man is justified by works and not by faith only. I'll carry on to verse 25. Likewise, was not Rahab the harlot also justified by works when she received the messengers and sent them out on another way? For as the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without works is dead also. So now this is the last part of my message. When you hear from God, you heard from God the message, you heard what He says to you, okay? Then you have to act on it. And that's what I call living by faith. So your action is determined by what God basically says that you do. All right? So number one, we know what the definition of faith is. I've just read it in the book of from the book of Hebrews, chapter 11, verse 1. But then after that, we also have to understand where does faith comes from. And faith comes from hearing, and hearing the message that comes from God. And then after that, you have to live according to what God actually says. So let me just give you like a very practical example. If, for example, live in a certain city and I am looking for employment, all right? God speaks to me and says to me, son, I want you to follow a career in teaching, all right? So now I heard a message from Him, right? I heard a message from Him, and the message will germinate something in me. When I decide to live by faith and according to what He says, then I will align my actions to what He says that I should do. And that's what you call living by faith. All right? So that's basically a simple and a very short definition of what faith is and how to manifest faith. Right? I hope that you understood everything, and I will see you soon in another video. Ciao now.